This story follows a U.S. Navy reconnaissance mission over the contested South China Sea. The mission is given rare access to a CNN crew aboard the U.S. flight, and tensions between the U.S. and China are brought into stark contrast. As the flight nears the contested Paracel Islands, it is intercepted by a Chinese fighter jet, armed with air-to-air missiles. The fighter jet hovers perilously close to the U.S. plane, and the CNN crew can see the pilot turning to look at them. The Chinese fighter jet escorts the U.S. plane for 15 minutes before turning away. The incident highlights the tensions that are brewing in the South China Sea and the broader relationship between China and the U.S. The South China Sea has emerged as a major potential flashpoint in the Asia-Pacific. Not only does the strategic waterway hold vast resources of fish, oil, and gas, but about a third of global shipping passes through it, worth about $3.4 trillion in 2016, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, SI's, China Power Project. Islands in the South China Sea, like the Paracels, are the subject of overlapping territorial claims from China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. China claims historic jurisdiction over almost the entirety of the vast sea and, since 2014, has built up tiny reefs and sandbars into artificial islands heavily fortified with missiles, runways, and weapon systems, sparking outcry from the other claimants. The Paracel Islands are in the northern part of the South China Sea, east of Da Nang, Vietnam, and south of China's Hainan Island. Named by 16th-century Portuguese mapmakers, they have no indigenous population to speak of, only Chinese military garrisons amounting to 1,400 people, according to the CIA fact book. Surrounding them is 12 nautical miles of airspace that China claims as its own, a claim Washington doesn't recognize. Far to the southeast sits the Spratly Islands chain, just 186 miles from the Philippine island of Palawan. In 2016, in a case brought by the Philippines, an international tribunal in The Hague ruled that China's claim to historic rights to the bulk of the sea had no legal basis. But Beijing has rejected the tribunal's ruling and continued its military buildup, building bases in the Spratlys, which it calls the Nansha Islands. China also conducts regular military exercises in much of the South China Sea and maintains a large presence of Coast Guard and fishing vessels in the disputed waters, which has frequently stoked tensions with its neighbors. When flying close to the Philippines, the U.S. Navy P-8 spotted a PLA Navy-guided missile destroyer and descended to around 1,000 feet to get a closer look, bringing more warnings from the PLA. The U.S. Navy says these missions are routine. U.S. vessels and aircraft operate regularly where international law allows, the Pentagon says. But China claims the U.S. presence in the South China Sea is what's fueling the tensions. When a U.S.-guided missile cruiser steamed near the Spratly Islands in November, the PLA said such action seriously infringes on China's sovereignty and security, and is hard proof is that the U.S. is seeking maritime hegemony and militarizing the South China Sea. The U.S. Navy said the U.S. cruiser conducted the operation in accordance with international law and then continued on to conduct normal operations in waters where high seas freedoms apply. The tensions are always less when the U.S. commander of Friday's mission, Navy CMDR, Mark Hines, is talking with the Chinese side. Silence brings uncertainty, he says. Whenever there's no response, it leaves questions. Do they understand what we're saying? Do they understand?